I didn't want you to miss out on this amazing opportunity. This is going to revolutionize your practice. Introducing the Acupuncture Musculoskeletal Manual online course led by my friend and colleague, Dr. Rebecca Stevens. And if you've taken a cosmetic acupuncture course, you know how amazing she is. We didn't learn this in school. It's going to blow your mind. I think personally, it's a game changer for practitioners and students alike. You're going to learn muscle palpations, advanced needling techniques, bone pecking, trigger point release, range of motion assessment skills, and so much more. You have lifetime access, so you can watch it over and over if you need to. You get 6 continuing education hours. You can join our private Facebook group community for support, and you'll have 3 additionals, free bonuses to elevate your skills. You'll have access to this incredible course at 25% off the regular price, but only until May 28th. Don't miss out. Go to my website, acuproacademy.com/MSK, musculoskeletal, MSK, or click the shop tab on the menu bar. I can't wait for you to benefit from this amazing course and in turn help your patients, because after all, when it comes to pain, acupuncture rocks. All right, let's get into today's show. One of the things I love the most is to help students and new practitioners grasp TCM and have fun with it. Recently, I did a mentoring session with a naturopathic doctor from Texas who is going to take her boards to become also a licensed acupuncturist. Her questions were so enlightening, and I was really trying to help her out. And I figured I should share this conversation with you so you can benefit from such insightful questions she had. So we talked about, of course, easy way to make a diagnosis, but specifically including preparation for exam, studying techniques, diagnosis of specific conditions, specifically pain and skin problem. But we also talked about how to utilize the 4 vital substances, the Zong organ, and the 8 principle in order to make the best diagnosis possible. And we also dove into the TCM view on fasting, because fasting is such a big topic around the world right now, and so many of our patients are doing intermittent fasting. This episode is full of tips and tricks and nuggets, and I truly hope you benefit from it. Let's rock it. Welcome to AcuPro, a show dedicated to making Chinese medicine and acupuncture easy to grasp and fun to learn. Hi, I'm your host, Clara Cohen. I support practitioners and students like you in changing the world one patient at a time. My goal is to share my passion for TCM and empower you to achieve superior patient care. I love to showcase the amazing benefits of acupuncture because, after all, acupuncture rocks. What is it you're trying to get out of this session?
I loved coming to your classes, and I felt like I learned so much just with your style of teaching. And so now I'm preparing for some entrance exams and then eventually, hopefully next year, for boards. Would love to have any of your thoughts on the best way to put the information together to study, because there's so much in Chinese medicine, which is wonderful. At the same time, it's also crazy. And when you don't speak Pinyin, it's hard to put some of that information together. I feel like I'm just memorizing.
One of the things that I would say is know your foundation well, because it's really important to understand the 8 principles, like your yin-yang, yin excess, yin deficiency, yang excess, yang deficiency, knowing the function of the Zong organ. Even if you have to memorize them, you should know them by heart. But I would say yin-yang theory, vital substances, and Zong organ should be your main focus first. Because here's how it goes. If you know for sure that there is a relationship between a muscle and the spleen, and then the spleen transport and transform food in order to give nutrients to the body, so we have enough strong muscle to be able to exercise, when you know that relationship, then it can help you a lot in your diagnosis. It can help you a lot when you're reading something and someone is like having fibromyalgia, or they're constantly in muscle ache, or they have muscle tension, or they over-exercise, overuse their muscle, or they don't use their muscle and never exercise. You have to look at the spleen because that's the relationship. So if you know your foundation well and you know that's the spleen function, you know that worry and overthinking is the spleen function. Okay, I know that's the function. Then if I see someone that has fibromyalgia, is an overthinker, worries, okay, I got to look at the spleen, right? Like right there, you have clues. So for me, that is the basic. It's always knowing what each organ does, what do the four vital substances do and where are they connected to. And then the yin yang, because you start with the basics. Let's say for boards, they're going to give you little mini cases, right? They'll give you 4 sentences of a mini case. Right away, when you read this, decide, is this an excess or a deficiency? Because right away, you will see, right? As the person is fatigued, there's a weak pulse, there's a pale tongue. So you see this and you're like, oh, that's deficiency. What kind of deficiency? I don't know. But at least I know from the 8 principle or from the yin yang perspective, now I'm looking at deficiency. And then they give you the fibromyalgia, worry, overthinking, just like gut issue and depressed and all those things. And you're like, okay, now it's deficiency and now it's spleen because all those symptoms connect to the function of spleen. So now there's a spleen qi deficiency. And so then you have options. Is this qi deficiency, blood deficiency, yin, yang? Like, what is the deficiency? And really, we only had so many deficiencies. Even if you can't remember which organs are more deficient than others. For example, liver qi deficiency doesn't exist. But maybe you don't remember that some don't exist or you don't have to memorize all the patterns. But what you have to think is it can only be yin deficiency, yang deficiency, because it's yin and yang. Then you look at the 4 substances, essence deficiency, qi deficiency, body fluid deficiency, and blood deficiency. So the 4 substances. So yin, yang, qi, blood, body fluid, essence. That's the only deficiency we can have. There's no other ones. So that narrows it down, right? That you look and you're like, okay, I see it's a deficiency, then that's what I'm going to pick. And I pick the organ and then you narrow it down, right? So that makes it easier than having to memorize what are the symptoms of all qi deficiency. Start with that and then narrow it down. So when we look at excess, the options for excess is either excess pathogens, and that's chronic. I'm not talking about, it could be acute, of course. You could have a cold and it's wind cold. But if it's chronic, your excess is going to be either pathogen. So internal excess damp, internal excess heat, like stomach heat, for example, or lung heat. It could be excess damp, excess heat, excess wind, which I'm talking about internal wind. Excess cold, which is excess yin or excess cold, which happens a lot with women and uterus and all that kind of stuff. Those are the excess for pathogens or in phlegm. Of course, you can have phlegm. I said damp, but damp and phlegm can be excess. And then the other excess is stagnation, either qi or blood. That's it. Those are your options. So when you look at a case, is this excess or deficiency? You should know right away. The pulse, the tongue, the symptoms. Oh, that looks like an excess. Okay. The tongue is, red with a yellow coat. The pulse is slippery, rapid. That's excess. This person is thirsty. They're gulping. They're hot all the time. They have insomnia. They sweat easily. And you have all this thing. You're like, okay, it's excess. Now I know it's excess heat. So it's differentiate either the 5 pathogens or the 2 stagnations. That's your excess. Those are your options. Then you can narrow it down to organs. This person is having acid reflux, heartburn. So now you know the excess is in the stomach. And because of all the excess heat we mentioned, then we know now it's stomach heat. That's the first thing. The second thing is when you do boards, it's all multiple choices, right? Process of elimination will always work. I used to do my quiz that way, where there's always 2 you can eliminate right away. You're like, for sure it's not that. I can see there's no cold in there, so check. But there's always 2 that are very close, right? And so it's on purpose to make you think. So then at least when you have 4, you can eliminate. I always start with elimination. And then you have 2 and you're like, I can see it's more stomach, not really liver. There's fire everywhere, but no, this is more stomach. So I'll pick stomach. Does that make sense?
Yeah, breaking it down like that, I think is so nice. Just chunking it. I love the way that you explained that. And, differential diagnosis is challenging. But
yes,
just the way that you just explained it opened up so many things for me. When someone comes in with pain, I just remember a long time ago that I was told you have to look at it. Is it something to do with the chi or the blood? And you have to break it down. Is there an easy way that you do it when you look at someone walking in with pain?
Okay, so we have two pain, acute, chronic. Which one are you asking about? Because the answer will be different.
It doesn't matter. We can start with acute and then look at chronic. Is that okay?
Yeah. So when it comes to acute pain, let's say someone they fell in the snow, they broke a bone, maybe they woke up one day and they're like, oh my God, I'm in so much pain. I don't know what happened. Sometimes you don't even know how it happened, but you're in a lot of pain. That is always blood stasis because it's acute, strong stabbing pain. If it's trauma injury, right? If it's an injury or something that is really strong and stabbing, it's always a stagnation of blood because the blood is pooled there and you're in so much pain in that area. Stabbing pain in an area where the pain is, which is called fixed stabbing pain, is always blood stasis. Now, that's an acute pain. If you have someone come in and they're like, during my menstruation, I have acute pain of menstruation cramp, right? It's like I'm bent in half in my bed. That's a blood stasis, right? Because of course, when she's here, it's not acute right now because she doesn't have a period, but she's telling you that when the period comes, it is acute and it is painful. So that's a blood stasis. So when the pain is strong and it's acute, most of the time, if it's trauma injury, there's inflammation, which is excess heat. There's blood stasis, which is that pain stuff. And then sometimes if the trauma just happened, it could be swelling. So that there's dampness because it's swelling, right? But if there's no swelling, no matter what, it's blood stagnation. So that's for your acute pain. When it comes to chronic pain, yes, the basics will be either is chi stagnation or blood stasis for excess because there's chronic pain that's deficient. Okay? Just to make it more fun. So when there is chronic pain that is chi stagnation, the pain comes and goes. It's not always there, or it may move. So I'll give you an example. The pain that is chi stagnation could be that someone has elbow pain. But it's not there the next day. Oh, it's gone. Oh, 2 days later, it came back. Oh, so it's come and goes. And then there's the traveling pain. So if we keep the same example, it would be, today, all day, my joint and my elbow bug me. And then 3 days later, now it's my knee joints help me. So obviously with rheumatoid arthritis, for example, people have the chi stagnation pain where it's definitely hurting in different area if they have more joints than just one that's affected. So that's one example. Another example would be if you have a headache that starts here in the occipital region, and then because you were stressed, which is this chi stagnation coming up from the shoulder and the traps being tight probably, and then it traveled to the temporal headache, and by the end of the day, it's above my eye and it's really bothering me. So now it's it's a moving headache. Moving is always a chi stagnation. If it doesn't change place, I always have a migraine right there on the right side of my temple. It's so bad. That's blood stasis. It doesn't move. It's always there. It's strong. It's constant, right? Or like the acute injury where the pain is constant. So that's the difference for the excess for the chi and blood. However, there is also pain that is going to feel hot, as in if you put a cold compress, it feels better. So now there could be chi stagnation for the pain or blood stasis for the pain, but there's also heat. So now you have two things, two excess, right? So then you put a cold compress and the person says, oh, it feels much better. If a hot pad feels better, then now we know it's either blood stasis or chi stagnation with cold. Usually when there is pain, if you have blood stasis, let's say you have women with menstruation cramp that is stabbing during the period, and then they'll say, oh, when I put a heating pad on it, it feels so much better. So now you know it's blood stasis and cold. Or if someone comes in and has sciatica and they're like, oh, I'm in so much pain. My lower back and my glutes are really killing me. But when I put a heat pad, oh, I feel so much better. When I take a hot bath, it feels better. Now it's blood stasis and it's cold. Right? So it gives you the clues of opposite. This is your yin yang again, cold and heat, right? It's the yin yang. Now that was for excess. You can also have pain that is swollen, like rheumatoid arthritis, right? Where I said my elbow joint hurts and it's all swollen and it's worse when it's raining outside. This is why a lot of people love to go down to Texas or Arizona because it doesn't rain, right? So the dampness makes it worse. That means that now you're like, oh, dampness makes your arthritis worse and cold. When it's raining and cold outside, my pain is so bad. Now it's a chi stagnation because it's moving area. And then it's due to cold because cold makes it worse. And then it's due to excess damp because it's swelling and it's damp and rainy outside and it makes it worse. So that's excess. Deficiency is not many deficiency for pain when it comes to pain. Most deficiency pain are going to be blood deficient. And so we're going to have pain that is going to be dull because it's a deficiency, right? So if you see dull pain or an ache, it's very different from like stabbing migraine. That's excess, right? It's like blood stasis. But if you see someone that says, oh, I have a dull, constant headache, like it's just been there all day, but it doesn't bother me, but it's a 2 out of 10, that's a deficiency. If it's a 12 out of 10, it's definitely a blood stasis. So that gives you like that dull ache. Again, it's acute or chronic, right? So we look at that from that perspective as well. So does that help?
Very helpful. Yes. I was just writing so fast. Make sure I have all these pearls of wisdom. And then my mind, sometimes I get confused. Which one came first, the chi or the blood?
That's always tough. But that again is going back to foundation, because if you remember by knowing your zongfu organ function, if you know that the spleen produces qi from nutrients and from eating our diet, and then from there produces blood. In order for spleen to produce blood, it needs energy, and it gets energy from food. So first we need the food, and think of this as your digestive system, right? We used to say you are what you eat. Then they change it to what you absorb, right? That changed a bit. So Chinese medicine says, okay, we put the nutrient in, and if spleen qi is strong, it can take those nutrients and produce blood. That's the absorption. But if spleen qi is weak, blood is not produced because there's not enough to help produce. So if there's blood deficiency, then you have to say it started with spleen qi deficiency. And of course, it could start from the fact that either spleen qi was weak from different reasons, maybe overworked, worry, overthinking, a lot of stress, etc., or for years of diet that weakened the qi of spleen because the spleen couldn't keep up with this processed food and all this, and it just got depleted. When you look back at foundation of the function of spleen, the only thing that can be detrimental to spleen are diet, because it's the digestive system, worry and overthinking, and the last one is dampness, because spleen does not like dampness, right? So if you live in a damp environment, I had a patient that came to see me years ago, and she came and she's, I don't know, I'm tired all the time. I feel like my legs is 200 pounds. I have postnasal drip. My hair is greasy. And since I moved to BC from Saskatchewan, my health has been terrible. And I was like, so where do you live? And she goes, I live in a basement suite. So her basement suite was really damp. Not only that, but she went and checked it out because I asked her there was mold in there, which is very damp. And then she comes from a climate that's very dry, and she moved to a place where it rains every frigging day.
Yeah, that's a big change.
But that was the dampness that depleted her spleen qi. That's why she was fatigued and she had all this damp symptoms. So again, which one came first? So spleen, if you know from foundation, gets affected by dampness and is in charge of nutrition and is connected to worry, overthinking. If you see any of those things that's happening, then you're like, okay, spleen is involved somewhere. That's going back to foundation always. Someone can have very bad immune system. They get the cold, the flus. It takes them 3 weeks to a month to get rid of it. And they still feel so tired. It's taking me forever to heal. And I catch everything under the sun. So you know the lung qi is deficient because the lung is in charge of immune system. That's going back to foundation. So you're like, okay, lung qi deficiency. But at the same time, they have loose stools and bloating, and they have poor appetite, and they eat really bad, and they have a job that's very stressful, and they worry constantly about finance. And you're like, okay, now there's spleen qi deficiency. You're not eating well, you're not feeding your spleen good food, and you're stressed and worrying about finance, and you have loose stools, that's a spleen qi deficiency. So now you have lung and spleen qi deficiency. And what's interesting is in the 5 elements, spleen is the mother of lung, which means the immune system is depleted because this person's not feeding their body properly and the spleen is deficient, right? Like they don't have good gut bacteria because they're eating not good diet. It's looking at those clues that go back to the basics. Oh, this is a deficiency for sure. This person's sick all the time. They're fatigued. It's a deficiency. Immune system. Okay, it's lung. Digestive system. Okay, it's spleen. Because I got 2 now. Now, what deficiency is this? Let's look deeper. Is it qi, a blood, body fluid, essence, yin, or yang? Those are your options. That's it. Diagnosis has to be the hardest part of Chinese medicine. We always say there is no wrong treatment in TCM, only the wrong diagnosis. This is why I created my second book, Chinese Medicine Made Easy, to make it easy to grasp using a lot of colorful visuals. I have included all Chinese medicine foundation, yin yang theory, 5 elements, zong fu organ, all of it. All diagnosis, of course, including tongue and pulse, practice case studies to help you improve your skills, as well as give you access to my online fillable intake form to use with your own patients. You can download the digital version on any device, and it comes with many video links to complement it. Or if, like me, you like to read a real book, the hard copy ships all over the world. Before you invest in this book, you can download a sample of it to make sure that the format of the book is everything you were looking for, because I want to make sure that you are absolutely benefiting from it. Listen to what people have to say about my green book, Chinese Medicine Made Easy. The more I read, the more I like this book. It is simple to follow. All information is super organized with great pictures, makes memorizing a lot easier. This book will definitely make my learning a lot more productive. Yay! So happy to hear that. You've done it again. You are amazing. I wish we had your resources 20 years ago back in TCM school. This also makes my day, because this is why I do what I've been doing with AcuPro Academy for quite a few years now to support everyone. Check out the links in the show notes below, or go to my website, acuproacademy.com, and click the shop tab on the menu bar and get your copy today.
I understand what you're saying about the climate and the environment, in addition to being affected by the diet lifestyle, which would lead me to my next question. I've been getting a lot of clients lately that they're just all about the intermittent fasting, and which it's okay. But I was wondering, like, from a TCM perspective, how should we look at that?
It's very interesting because in TCM perspective, when you look at the 24-hour clock, and every 2 hours represents different organs. And we look at, in TCM perspective, from 5 to 7 a.m. is when we should be waking up. So closer to 5, 6 in the summer and closer to 7 in the winter, because we want to go always with the season, with the environment, right? The whole point is to be balanced with our environment. From 5 to 7 a.m. is the large intestine. We're supposed to wake up at that time and have a bowel movement, empty the body. The next one is from 7 to 9, and it's the stomach. And at that time, between 7 and 9, according to TCM, we should slowly wake up the digestive system. So having warm lemon water to open up the digestive tract, and then start eating whatever breakfast fits this person's pattern. So that gives you from 7 to 9. The night before, from 5 to 7 p.m. is kidney time. Kidney is related to conception, reproduction, growth, aging, all that. So in TCM perspective, from 5 to 7, we should connect with our family. This is when we connect with our children, our partners, our family. This is when we gather and have our meal together. So technically in TCM, by 7 o'clock, no more food after that, right? And then you don't eat till 7 or 9 the next morning, depending, because it's between 7 and 9. So technically you could do 12 to 14 hours fast. And that is a TCM perspective, at least the 12 hours for sure, because you're not supposed to eat from 7 to 9, because 7 to 9 is pericardium time. It's when you're supposed to start introspective, take care of your heart, meditate, calm down, read a book, do things that are going to be calming. From 9 to 11, you go to bed on those hours, depending if it's summer or winter. So as a lifestyle perspective, intermittent fasting that is done within that 12 to 14 hours, or if you eat at 5 and finish by 6, technically that could be till 9 in the morning, you could have up to 16 hours. I think it depends on the person. If it's someone that's really excess, I think if they finish, you eat between 5 and 7 more towards the beginning, and then they eat in the morning more towards the 9 o'clock, and they get those 16 hours, I think it would be really good because of excess. For deficient people, it probably would be shorter, like a 12 hours because they're deficient. As a TCM perspective, I think it works really well. It just have to be adapted to each individual.
Yeah, to me, I think the 12 is like a normal life, right?
And I think in North America, we're like, oh, eat 6 meals a day. Even if you do small meals, it's not like you go over your caloric intake for the day. It's just you're not resting. You're constantly stimulating that digestive system. So they're like, oh yeah, but it's great because it speeds up your metabolism. I'm like, yeah, but it's depleting your whole digestive system because it's overworked. So it may speed up your metabolism because you're working constantly, but it's the same as Olympic athletes. They're constantly exercising and working out. And then by the time they're 30, they're in pain and they can't do anything. That's why their lifespan of their career is very short. Of course, you could do this to your stomach and spleen to speed up your metabolism, but it is not going to be good for the health of it. Yeah.
Speaking of like nutrition, as they're doing the keto or the really high fat diets, also adding it with the intermittent fasting. What do you think from a TCM perspective?
From a TCM perspective, this is the thing that doesn't work in TCM at all. There's going to be different fads. There was the low fat. I remember in the 80s when I was younger, it was like literally the low fat, right? You can't have fat at all. And so they made everything no fat. They would advertise like, so you buy my product, it has no fat in it. And then there was the Atkins diet, which was high fat, high protein. Then there's the keto diet, which is a lot of more fat than protein in general and no carbs or very low carbohydrate in general. So what's interesting to me is it's the same as Western medicine. It's, oh, you have insomnia. This is what you do. Oh, you have dysmenorrhea. This is what you do. Oh, you have high blood pressure. This is what you do. I'm sorry, but you and I may have insomnia, but we're completely different people. So it's the same with the diet, right? A keto diet may work for someone for a little bit because they need a certain environment in order to heal, to decrease whatever is happening, inflammation in their body, and it might help them. But in the long run, it won't work because it's not as balanced, right? However, there's definitely things that won't work for everybody. So this is why when patients are like, oh, my friend is doing this and it's really helping her, so I'm going to do that. I'm like, oh, you're so spleen Qi deficient and so blood deficient. If you do this, it's going to get worse. So I can't tell her not to do, but I'll explain and say, your friend is not you. We are completely different. I would not treat your friend the way I treat you, right? So it'd be a good idea to look at, for me, in my perspective, you need to eat really warm, nourishing food. That's really important because the way your body is depleted, right? Let's say spleen Qi and spleen blood deficient. So having broth and bone broth, for example, with lots of vegetables and having stews and sweet potatoes and salmon and things that are going to nourish your body, but are easy to digest. I always tell people with spleen Qi deficiency, make sure to eat baby food because it gives your digestive system a rest because people don't chew. When they eat, they don't chew. Nobody chews 30 times or 36 times. And so because they don't chew enough, it puts so much pressure on the digestive system, on the spleen and stomach to break down that food. And that puts so much tiredness. And when she's already spleen Qi deficient and weak, I'm like, have baby food. What is baby food? Things that are easy to digest and don't need a lot of chewing. It'd be better to have almond butter versus chewing almond because you probably don't chew that almond more than twice and it's massive pieces and it probably ends up in your stool and you see it in your toilet bowl. So it's having things like salmon or fish because it's more brittle compared to meat, for example, or maybe chicken because it's a little bit more softer than, let's say, beef if it was a steak or something. Or lamb. Lamb is very hard. The hardest one is pork. Pork is very hard to digest. So that would be a big no-no. But having things like sweet potatoes that are high in fiber or things that are just going to be very easy to eat, for example, have some greens, but they should be cooked. Don't have raw broccoli, even though broccoli is great for you. And then you can guide them and then they can decide what they want to do in the end, right? Because it might work well for them for a little bit or make them feel like they have a little bit of a sense of control over this. Maybe they're trying to lose weight and that kind of thing. But it has to be sustainable and it has to adapt to each person.
Yeah. And the other thing, and I tend to do this, I guess in the summer, it's okay. I'm not doing it right now, but I'll do smoothies just for that reason, right? I can take my vegetables and fruits and throw it in the mix and it's good to go and it's easy. But then I feel like, oh, it's making me cold inside. It's always a challenge with TCM because you see the other side.
It's so funny because I like smoothies too, and I run hot. I'm more on the heat side, so I won't do that in winter. But in the summer, I'll have some smoothies. So I only do it when it's really hot day. When I sip, I don't just gulp it and take the time and stuff and have it maybe a couple of times a week because I'm excess heat. However, if someone is very deficient, specifically when I see fertility patients and they come in, they're like, oh, I'm having lots of green smoothies because it's great to decrease inflammation. I read that it's anti-inflammatory. It is anti-inflammatory, but this person's already cold all the time, right? So I usually tell them, don't believe what I say, have a smoothie, see how cold you feel after. And they come back and they go, oh my God, like I was sitting at my desk, my hands were frozen. I had the heating pad on me. I'm like, see what I mean? So it's not a bad thing. It's just not the right thing for you at this stage.
I think when you explain it like that, it does help though, because like you said, they think they're doing something healthy for their body, which they are in theory. To be able to keep that middle warm to nurse the baby is so important. When they see it in their mind's eye of, oh, I do need to have that little warm place for my egg.
Yeah, I always say you can't grow a baby in the fridge. You can only grow a bun in the oven. That's just, and people click. They're like, you're right. I'm like, you need to be an oven, not a fridge.
That is so true. Skin can be so challenging in TCM. And I was wondering if you had a thought on the most common things like the eczema, psoriasis. We see that a lot. Do you have a certain way that you talk to patients? Because most of the time I know in my heart, if we heal your gut, most of that's going to go away. But from a TCM perspective, how do you normally approach it with that conversation?
Yeah. So when it comes to specifically, like you said, eczema or psoriasis, which are probably the most common one we see in practice because a lot of people have specifically eczema, it is obviously going to be, again, the 5 element, right? The digestive system or earth generating a good immune system or a good lung and large intestine, which are connected to skin. So this is all gut first, stress as well. Stress is going to amplify it, make it worse. Like we see that all the time with patients when they're stressed, the eczema comes up or the psoriasis flares up when they're stressed. So we need to address the liver in TCM perspective, because that's the first one that gets stressed. We need to address the gut and the healing and the diet. Both psoriasis and eczema don't do good with damp food. So like dairy and sugar and processed food, because it's going to make it all worse. So we need to have a more of a clean diet. That's for sure. So I tell patients that because I always explain your skin is your biggest detoxifying organ. So if things come on the skin, that means they are not eliminated from inside the body. So there is inflammation in there that is not able to come out. We need to decrease the inflammation because a healthy skin reflects the healthy inside of your body. So that's what we need to do. Now, depending on where it is located, it also gives us clues of what's going on. I had a patient years ago. He came with psoriasis, and when I looked at it, it was all on one side of the body. But the point was, it was all on the back of the side of the neck around the SEM, all the way along the traps. And then he had a patch on his ribs on the lateral side. And then he had another patch just down above his knee on the IT band. And I was like, oh my God, this is all gallbladder meridian. So this is interesting. So when we do the full consultation, and he's shy, he's very timid. He barely can look at me in the eyes when he's speaking. And I can see his very gallbladder personality, no self-confidence. And he has a hard time answering my question. He's not sure what to say. And you could see that. I'm like, oh my God, you're so gallbladder. And your psoriasis is all on your gallbladder meridian. To me, this is so cool because it's a great way to look at it. When we did a full consultation, yes, we talked about, okay, let's look at the psoriasis that gets worse with stress. And then the diet. And he's a young man in the early 20s, so his diet wasn't that great. Fair enough. I said, stress makes it worse because obviously what stresses you out is reflecting here. And I was very honest. I said, this whole area where everything is located for you In Chinese medicine, it corresponds to self-esteem, self-doubt, self-worth. He's like, I have massive social anxiety. Even sitting in the front today, before you came to pick me up, when I was sitting there in the waiting area, there was another person there plus the receptionist. And I started like literally sweating and feeling anxious because there's two people there that I don't know. So imagine the stress this person has with self-worth, self-confidence. I said, we need to have counseling. You need to be able to work through this. And then what I'll do is I'll de-stress you, put you in a parasympathetic state, allow your body to learn to relax. And we're going to do some breathing and meditation as we do this to teach you to calm yourself down when you have anxious time, like in the reception area. So at least you can handle, because you can't escape it. You're going to have to go outside. And so I treated more the stress and the emotional aspect, and then told them about a few things about the diet and what to change. It's explaining to people. It gives them an empowerment to understand, because nobody, when they went to see dermatologists, told them, oh, you have a low self-esteem. That's why you have all the psoriasis that's exacerbating when you're stressed. No one's going to say that to you.
The other thing, just going back to thinking about like the person's constitution, because from a naturopathic medicine side, that's how we look at it. In Chinese medicine, I'm not fast enough, I think. And so do you have tips or tricks on how to quickly, without staring the person down where they feel uncomfortable, how to determine what they are? Like in naturopathic medicine, we'll look at the color of the eyes and the shape of the face. Like we have a couple of things that help us quickly do a constitution in addition to how they hold their body. But what do you think are some quick tips to do that for Chinese medicine?
So there's that first initial when they walk in, and that's practice, right? It is practicing on a lot of your friends and family members until you feel like, oh, you could see it right away. And so when someone walk in, there is a few things you could see. If it's a very thin, bony, skinny person, it's a wood type, right? So that tells you right away. Now I'm talking about natural skinny, not someone that starved themselves. So that's usually a wood type. If someone comes in, is the apple shape, meaning the bigger on the top, but smaller at the waist and smaller at the hips. So that's a metal. Wider shoulder than your hips, that's a metal type. Your hips are smaller than your shoulder. Then let's reverse that. So then you have the pear shape, right? The one that's heavy in the hips, heavy in the legs, but small at the shoulder, small at the top. That's an earth type. That's a spleen type. So that's an earth type. And it is an earth type because we usually say in a lot of cultures, if you have big hips, you're earthy, you're Mother Earth, you're going to have lots of children, right?
Yeah, they did there are several studies, but I thought it was so interesting. They didn't put a face on any of the subjects. They just had body types, and they just had the people respond to it, thousands and thousands of people. And the men would always pick the women with bigger hips because in just DNA, they know that's the way to procreate. It's very interesting.
That's often easy to see, wider shoulder or wider hips, so earth metal, and then the skinny wood. The water type is easy because when the person is sitting across from you, they have a round face. They look like a baby. You look at your sheet and they wrote down the birth date and you thought, that's not possible. They're 45. They look like they're 12. Like, they look so young. They have that baby face. They're more roundish. I call them like they grew, but the roundish baby, right? So that's the water type. And then, and they're round in general, like even their body is quite round and soft, very soft. And then the last one, that's the hardest one, I think, is the fire. So the fire type usually has more of a heart-shaped face. Think Ryan Gosling, pointy chin, but wider at the top, at the forehead. So like a triangle shape with a thinner chin area. So that's usually it. And then they are going to be thin, but not skinny, because I say they're on fire, right? They move so much. So they're a little bit more jittery, right? They move really fast. They walk very fast. They're a little bit more restless looking. And so they are quite thin, but they're not the wood skinny. And of course, some people may have two, right? You may see someone and you're like, ooh, you look like you could be metal. You really have a small chin and wider forehead, like a triangle face. So then you're fire and metal. You could have someone that's really round baby face with big hips. You're like, oh, you're earth and water, right?
Thank you so much. I felt so knowledgeable now.
Thank you so much for spending your time with me today. I truly hope you benefited from this episode, and I would love for you to share it with a friend that may benefit from it as well. Follow the show, leave a review, and if you want more, go to my website, AcuProAcademy.com. I have tons of resources there with treatment protocols, case study, free courses, and so much more. And connect with me on all social media at AcuPro Academy. I'm on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, X, Pinterest, and LinkedIn and TikTok. And no matter what, keep rocking it using TCM. Please listen to the disclaimer, because the AcuPro Show Podcast and material shared through AcuPro Academy, which is a subdivision of Natural Health Sense Incorporated, are designed solely for educational and entertainment purposes. The utilization of information from this podcast or any associated material is at the user's discretion and risk. This content is not meant to replace the guidance of an acupuncturist, Chinese medicine doctor, medical doctor, physician, or any qualified professional, nor is it a substitute for proper diagnosis or treatment. Users are strongly advised not to ignore or postpone seeking medical advice for any existing medical condition with their healthcare professional regarding any health concerns.